Good evening, ladies.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Good evening. Amen.
Okay. Starting a new chapter. Okay, so it says in the Torah, if you read it in the wrong order, Lo Yatzah, he didn't fulfill his obligation. Katav Rambam, says the Rambam, Zal, Be'emet Dvarim Morim, what was that said? Beseder Psukim. That means that we're talking about the order of the verses. Aval Ima Kikdim Parsha Lechavrata, but if he switched the order of the paragraphs, even though he's not permitted to do that, Yatzah, but he did fulfill his obligation. Why is that? Because it's not really next to it, juxtaposed in the Torah. Even though we learned in the Mishnah, why did Shema come before Rebbe Shemua? Because they arranged it Leomra Ken to do it this way, lechatchila, v'afal gav d'tanan. Even though we learned in the Mishnah ben vayomer le'emet, between vayomer and emet, v'yatziv lo yivsik, you shouldn't interrupt there. Hayno k'shekore aparshiyot keseder. That's when he was reading them on the order, the right order. Takanat chachamim. Okay, that's something else. Let's see the bit Yosef, and we'll get back to that later. So it says Bet Yosef, the source for this is Mishnah Perek Chaya Kore over there, Chet Vav Amud Aleph, Katav Rambam. That Rambam, where is that? Perek Bet, second Perek, B'ilchot Kriyat Shema. Lazav Kriyat Shema, Halacha Yud Aleph. Umash Katav Rabbeinu, that which Rabbeinu wrote, Afal Gav de Tanad, even though we learned in the Mishnah, Lama Kadma, why did this one precede the other one? The Afal Gav de Tanad, even though we learned in the Mishnah, all this stuff in the Torah, Ken Katvu Rabbeinu Yonah. That's what it says in Rabbeinu Yonah. Ve'arosh and the Rosh, ve'perek haya kore, over there in also on Brachot. Okay, so that's the sources he brings. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch. Pretty straightforward. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch, if you read it in the wrong order, Lo Yatzah, he didn't fulfill his obligation. What was it? What are we talking about? Beseder Psukim. We're talking about the order of the verses. But if he switch the order of the parshiot, the paragraphs, even though he's not permitted to do the lechatchila, but he did fulfill obligation. The fish because it's not juxtaposed in the Torah. So what does he mean to say by that? If it was juxtaposed, then it would be a bigger deal to switch it around. But since it's not, so what that means is they're not really related one to the other, like two separate entities. So switching the order is no big deal. But that's only regarding the paragraphs. But regarding the verses, that's going to be a problem, right? He didn't fulfill his obligation there. Okay, good. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, let's go to Bet. So it says in the in the tour, right, here it is. Okay, so it says, Kara Parsha v'ta'aba. He read and made a mistake. Right? Im yodea ech hanta. If he knows where he made the mistake. Kegon shekara kula. For instance, let's say he read the whole thing. Ela shedileg be'emtza pasuk echad. But the problem is that he skipped one verse, right? He jumped over it. He didn't read one verse. So what do you do in a case like that? Chozer lerosh oto pasuk. You should go to that verse where you missed it, and start from there, the Gomer Parsha, and then finish the whole paragraph. If he doesn't know where he made the mistake, then he should go back to the beginning of the whole paragraph, since he's not sure where he made the mistake. Ta'ab ben parsha to parsha. If you made a mistake between one paragraph and the other, he knows that it was at the end of that paragraph. The problem is, he's not sure whether he was at the end of the first paragraph or at the end of the second paragraph. Right? They sound the same, So you can make a mistake like that. So what do you do in a case like that? You should go back to the end of the first one because he's not sure. So in cases of doubt, he has to go back to the more stringent side. There's more stringent theory there. The more stringent possibility. And then he should start from there. Okay. If he made a mistake in וכתבתם, ואינו יודע אם בכתבתם בפרשה ראשונה, או בשנייה, but he's not sure if it was the וכתבתם in the first parak or the second parak. As we said, they sound the same, sometimes. So, חוזר וכתבתם ראשונה. So you should go back to the first one, as we said, right? Why? Because we're stringent about it. Since when you're not sure, be on the safe side. So says the Torah, that's only when he didn't start this place over here, which is the third paragraph already. So if he got to that place, We already know that he finished the second parsha. There's no reason to go back anymore to the first one. ואינו צריך לחזור, he doesn't go back. שכן הוא הרגל לשונו, because that's his already habitually, he's habituated to that. So that's why we assume that he already finished the second paragraph. למען ירבו, first it says למען ירבו, אחר פרשה שנייה, then he says it after the second paragraph. So therefore, we know that we can assume that he finished the second paragraph because of that. Okay, good. So that's the end of the tour, the whole thing. Let's go to Bet Yosef. So it says Bet Yosef. Now we're going back to where we said, right, that he made a mistake. So it says Bet Yosef. Where's the source for that? Perek Haya Kore, right? It's in the Gemara. Tet Zayin Amud Aleph. Tane Kamet Rabbi Yochanan. Right? They taught in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, a certain rabbi. Kara b'ta'a, if he made a mistake, he read and he made a mistake, but he doesn't remember where it was. So what should he do? Yachazor lerosh haperek. Go back to the beginning of the paragraph. Katav rosh, says the rosh, haynu dafka sheno yodea le'echan ta'a. That's only if you don't know where you made the mistake. But if he knows where he made the mistake, Shamar Zeh Perek, he already said this verse already, this paragraph, and it's Kar Shedileg Pasuk Echad. But now he remembers right that he missed one verse there. He skipped something there. B'teva Echad, or one word. Eno Tzarich Le'atchil. He doesn't have to go back to the beginning. Right? Ela Me'oto Pasuk, just to go back to that verse that he knows that he missed that one, and start from there and finish it off, right? From there. Finish off the paragraph. Ve'elach. Pasuk ve'elach. Ve'ach itani b'tosefta. That's what's in Tosefta. Ve'kach hem divrei Rabbeinu Yonah. Also it says Rabbeinu Yonah Zal v'chen katuv Tosfot. That's what it says in Tosfot also. V'chen nir'eh midivrei Rashi. Also Rashi. Okay, so that's the story there. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch there. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, Kara parashat v'ta'aba. He read the parsha, he read the paragraph, made a mistake. Im yodea echan ta'a. If he knows where he made the mistake, kikagon shekara kula. What does that mean? That he read the whole thing, but ela shedileg pasuk echad pensa. He skipped one verse in the middle. Chozer lerosh. So he goes back to the beginning. Oto pasuk of that verse. The Gomer parsha. And he finishes the paragraph from there. If he doesn't know where he made the mistake, so then he should go back to the beginning of that whole paragraph. Okay, good. That's bet. If you have any questions, let me know. Let's go to Gimel, Bet Yosef. So it says here, Ta'a ben perek leperek. He made a mistake between one paragraph and the other. So it says Bet Yosef, Sham, it's over there, ben perek leperek, between one paragraph and the other, Yachazor leperek rishon. He should go back to the first one because of the doubt that he has. Peresh Rashi explains, leperek rishon, Lefsek Rishon. What does that mean? The first perek, the first paragraph, the first end. In other words, the end of the first perek. That's where you should go. Since you're not sure whether you're at the end of the first one or the end of the second one, so go back to the end of the first one. But the Rambam says, Katav nelam mimenu ben parsha leparsha. He says like this, that he's not really sure which paragraph he's reading, right? The first one or the second one. He forgot. So, he's not sure which one he finished. Is he at the end of the first one or at the end of the second one? He doesn't know which one to begin. So he should go back to the end of the first one. It's like ve'ahavta. So he says, what's the reason? Because you have to make a interruption between le'olam va'ed and ve'ahavta, like we mentioned before already. Like we mentioned in chapter 61. Im Ken, it says, if so, that's the first gap, right? The first stop, the first end. You have to go back there. Right, so it's a little bit different here, right, than what we said in the Rashi. Because in the Rashi, we said that we're talking about he's not sure if he finished the first paragraph or he finished the second one. So he goes back to the end of the first one. According to Rambam, it's a little bit different, right? Let's just get it straight again one more time. So according to Rambam, he has to go back to where? To the beginning of the first paragraph, not the end. Now, the question is like this, right? Why would you have to go back to the beginning of that one? Because you were at the end. So therefore, the Bet Yosef explains that because you got to make a stop between the Olam Va'ed and the Ve'ahavta. And if so, he says, this is the first stop that there is. Since you're not sure which stop you're at, so you got to go back to that one, which is really the first stop. Interesting. So then he goes on. But he says, since he already knows that he read one paragraph already, so it can't be that he didn't read until there. So therefore, it doesn't go back to the Shema itself. That already must have said already. So that's the way it seems according to Rambam. So he says, you don't have to do it like the Maria. Let's try to explain the Rambam. In other words, he tried to explain the Rambam in a more normal way. But the truth is that the Rambam is a little bit not so normal because he's telling you to go back to the beginning of the first paragraph, which is a little bit abnormal. You may think that's not necessary. Interesting. Okay. So let's see what the halacha is, right? Bottom line. Let's go to Shulchan Aruch. So says the Shulchan Aruch, Ta'a ben parsha la parsha. He made a mistake between one paragraph and the other. Shu yodea shesiyem parsha. He knows that he finished something, right? Not sure if he finished the first one or the second one. He doesn't know it's the first one. Right? So he says, right, you go back and you start from V'haya im Shamua. You got to start from there. So the truth is that here he doesn't paskin like the Rambam. Interesting. So who does he paskin like? He paskins like the Torah and the Rashi. Because the truth is, that the Rambam is a little bit strange, as we said, right? Not so easy to understand what he's talking about there. A little bit forced, his logic there. Okay, that's very interesting. But
Kavod Harav, I'm sorry. What does a forced logic mean?
That means it's not so logical.
It's not so clear. Is that what you're saying?
It's not. It's clear, but it's not logical. In other words, the problem is that why would you have to go back to the beginning of the first paragraph when you know that you were at the end of a paragraph?
Okay.
You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense a little bit.
Okay. Got it.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
This is the problem. So therefore, it seems like he skipped over the Rambam here, and he passed him like the Tur and the Rashi. Interesting. Let me just go back here a little second and see what's going on here. Okay, I'm a little bit like wondering about this, right? What's the wonder? Because there's like a rule, Okay, well, it's interesting actually, that let me just go over the rules with you here, because when we started learning this series of halachot, we didn't really read the introduction of the Bit Yosef. There's an introduction there, Maybe one day we'll read that there, It's interesting to see, but just to give you like a quick recap of what it says there, right, in the Bit Yosef, in the introduction of Bit Yosef, he says that we have to like decide what's the halacha, because we have a lot of opinions, right? So how do we decide? So he says the best way to do it is to going to the majority. So the majority of what, right? So we have like three major Rishonim. We have the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh. So whatever is 2 out of 3, he says, right, that's how we paskin. Whatever is 2 out of 3. That's the general rule in the Bit Yosef, right? So now the question is like this, right? Did he follow that rule here? So before we answer that question, what I want to tell you is that but there's also a rule which is the exception to the rule. So what does that mean? That he made the rule that we go according to the majority, 2 out of 3. But the problem is that here, right, or also in other cases, you don't have 2 out of 3. What does that mean? That one of these Rishonim didn't like write about this topic. He didn't say anything about it. So then it's like 1 against 1. Sometimes. You know what I mean? What do you do in a case like that? So says the Bit Yosef, if it's like 1 against 1, and the third one didn't say his opinion about that, then what we do is we go according to the majority of the Rishonim, right? In other words, we count the other Rishonim, and whatever is the majority, the consensus there, right? We go according to that. If it's 1 against 1. But it's interesting, right? That here, what is it over here? Is it 1 against 1? Or what is it? If you know what I mean. So, right, the truth is that what do we have here, basically? We have here the Tur. We have here the Rashi. And we have the Rambam. So we don't really have here 1 against 1. Why is that? Because the other 2 are missing here, right? Which is the Rosh and the Rif. So basically, all we have is the Tur and the Rashi against the Rambam. So here he goes against the Rambam, right? It's like two against one, but that's not really so important, 2-1. What's the big difference anyway, right? 2 is better than 1, whatever. I mean, it is, but in this particular case, it's not the most important issue here. So what is the most important issue? You know what it is? That the Rambam's logic is forced, as we said, right? And this is really what because if the logic of the Rambam is really good, he probably will go according to the Rambam here, because the other two are not appearing here. So what he did here was that he went against the Rambam because his logic is not so good. So therefore, we go according to Rashi and the Tur. I just wanted to get that straight, right? And make you understand also, how that works, right? So that's the way the Bet Yosef paskins the halacha. He paskins according to the majority, 2 out of 3, basically. That's his general rule. Okay, whatever. Anyway, right, we'll get back to the next one, which is Dalet, right? That's the end of it. It's a short chapter. So it says here, he made a mistake in uchtaftam, right? This word. But the problem is it's written twice. It's written once in the first paragraph, once in the second paragraph. And he's not sure now, like, which one did I just say? The first paragraph or second paragraph? He blanked out, like he got distracted. So then what do you do in a case like that? So the Torah said what you should do is go back to the first one, right? Because you have a doubt. Okay, so that's that. Let's see the Bet Yosef here. Sham ben ktiva lektiva. Right? It says over there in the Gemara like this. He's not sure which uchtaftam he is. Choser lektiva rishona. Go back to the first one, he says in the Gemara. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan lo shanu ela shelo patach. So Rabbi Yochanan says that's only talking about what? If he didn't start yet, ben aman yirbu, right? The third paragraph. But if he already started that, that's already like habituated, so he already knows where he is. He won't make a mistake there. So all the poskim seem like they explain like Rabbeinu, the Tur. Right? But Rashi explains a little bit different. It seems like that when he says Rabbi Yochanan like that, en lit'on mikan ad emet v'yatziv. And he thought, right, you don't make a mistake after that until the end of the Emet Yatzib. So therefore you have to go back to Emet, because he knows this paragraph by heart. Rashba says regarding that, it seems like from his language, he explains, if he found himself like after that already, the man yabu, like והוא מסתפק אם קרא מה שלמעלה ממנו, and he's not sure if he read whatever is before that, שהוא מוצא בו עצמו, that he finds himself there, כגון שמצא עצמו ועשו להם ציצית, like he's over there, he's reading there, ואינו יודע אם קרא תחילה הפרשה, he's not sure if he read the first part of that paragraph. אם לאו or not, חזקה אמרה, because so we assume that he did. כיוון שהוא זכור שאמר למען ירבו עמכם. Because since he remembers that he says this thing already, לפי שכל אותה פרשה שגורה בפיו, because that paragraph is like people know it by heart. עד אמת ויציב, until אמת ויציב, וחזקה סרחה נקט בה. So therefore we assume he said it because of his habit. ולא איש ממית ממנה כלום, he didn't leave anything out from there. מכלל דברים אלו, says from here you see, שאם מצא עצמו באמצע, if he found himself in the middle of this paragraph, שאר פרשיות, not this paragraph, the other פרשיות, the other paragraphs, והוא מסתפק, and he's not sure, אם אמר מה שלמעלה ממנו, and he's not sure if he said what he said above it, אם לאו, if not, צריך הוא לחזור, he has to go back, עד המקום שהוא ברור לו, until a place where he knows for sure, Shikara, that he read it. Because the other parshiyot are not he doesn't know them by heart. So well. And maybe he made a mistake there, maybe he left something out. So he says, where's the source for his words? Since he started from this place, because if not so, then he should have said, right? If it's not so, he should have said any paragraph that would be the rule, not only the third paragraph. So then what's the difference between the third paragraph and the other words? It says, but it says, it doesn't make sense that that's the halacha when it comes to the other language. That he found himself there. That he said, we assume that he said everything above it. Because he remembers it. So, and the reason why I use this, he started from there, because he's talking about between uchtaftam, two words that are in the first paragraph, second paragraph. Nakat le klomar, that's why he brought that. Im yada she'amar k'tiba, if he said uchtaftam umesupak and he has a doubt, im rishona im shnia, if he was the first one or the second one, im achare amar leman yerbo, if afterwards he said leman yerbo chazaka michtiba shnia salik. So then we assume that he's in the second one already because he already finished it. He started the next piece already. V'sirche nakat, this is his habit. But tadalecha, so as you should know, demai shana. A parshat tzitzit sheteg shgura v'yoter mishar parshiyot. So it actually makes sense. Why? Because why would it be any different according to Rashi, right? What we said. Why does he know the third paragraph more by heart than the first two, right? Why would he know the third one better than the other two? He says them the same amount of times, right? So there's no reason to say that he knows the third paragraph better than the first two. That doesn't make any sense. So what do you see from here, right? The words of Rashi also here are not so logical. So therefore, we don't paskin like him. That's one reason why. Other Rabbi says just the opposite, right? The first two paragraphs he knows more by heart than the third one. Because they're more frequently said than the third paragraph. Whether it's in the daytime or nighttime. There's also, we have in Yerushalmi, there's a Gemara there. The story about Rabbi Elazar, Nachit Vasalik Amar Lon Ken Amar Li Rabbi Yochanan Karao Matzah Atzmo Leban Chazaka Kivan Kiven Rabbi Ila B'Shem Rabbi Yacha Rabba Nitpalel Umatzah Atzmo B'Shumiyat Tzriya Chazaka Kiven Ad Kan Shalom. Right. So also he says in the Yerushalmi it more implies not like Rashi, according to this Gemara there. Interesting. Okay, so let's see how the Shulchan Aruch comes out, right? Pretty much you can see it's not going to be like Rashi here. It's going to be like the way the Tur explained it. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch, Haya omed be'uchtaftam, right? Let's say he was saying uchtaftam. The problem is this is written twice, right? Once in the first paragraph, once in the second paragraph. He does not sure if he's in the first one or the second one. I forgot. So you should go back to the first one, right? That's only if you didn't start this part, right? Which is the next piece already. But if you already started that, right? And tzarich lachazor. He doesn't go back to the first one. Why? The sirche nakat ve'ata, because that's already a habituation. If he started that piece already, that means he was in the second one for sure. Otherwise, he wouldn't have started that. So there's something to be said about habituation, The mind works has habit forming kinds of a structure of the mind. So we assume that a person goes according to his regular habits. It's an assumption that the mind works that way. So same thing over here, that's the idea. Okay, very good. That's pretty clear. No, any questions about this? We're done with the whole chapter here. Going to the next one. I have one more question I want to ask you about this chapter, right? Which is, pretty decent question. Right? We already said here several times that if you're not sure whether you're in the first paragraph or the second one, you should go back to the first one, right? Out of doubt. So my question is, right? But didn't we already say that these paragraphs are from the rabbis? So the rule is, when it's a doubt from the rabbinically, we go leniently, So why not here? Why don't we go lenient over here? You would think we should, right? So why not here? According to the rule, we should be lenient. So, in my humble opinion, the answer is like this, right? That here the rabbis were stringent here. They were not lenient. They explicitly said so. In other words, in general, when there's a doubt about the rabbis, we go lenient. But here, they explicitly said to be stringent. That's one thing, right? But the question is why? So the answer, is probably like this, that since Kriyat Shema is such an important mitzvah, as we already mentioned, right? It's a big deal, It's a deal breaker if you don't do it right. So therefore, the rabbis here are stringent, about this. They took it very, very seriously, Kriyat Shema. So therefore, here the rabbis told you, even though in general, when it's a doubt about the rabbinical edicts, we go lenient, but here they told you dafka to be stringent because of the severity of the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. Probably that's what it is. Also, I think there's another reason, which is that, when we say you can be lenient, right? But here, it's like, it's no big deal to read it again, it just takes like 30 seconds, So what did you really lose by going back and doing it again? You know what I mean? So therefore, that's why a person should be stringent. Another reason. It's not a big deal to go back and do it again. When it comes to the Amidah, though, right, the rules are a little bit different there. If you're not sure where you are, what you should do there, the rules are a little bit different. And the reason is because the Amidah it's totally rabbinical, the whole thing from beginning to end. And it's not so important like the Kriyat Shema, which is, basically from the Torah, even though only the beginning is, but the basis is from the Torah. Okay, whatever, it's all discussion.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So what do we do with the Amidah if it happens? Do we go back to the beginning?
We're gonna get to that. Because of the Shem. In the summer, we're gonna discuss the laws of prayers.
Okay.
There's some details going on there.
All right.
I don't want to cover it now, but there's also I want to bring up one more point there, right? Which is that in the Amidah, there's also different consideration there. That if you go back and do it again, if you're not sure, there's an issue of blessing in vain, which is a big problem, right? But here, there's no issue like that. There's no blessings here, So since there's no issue of blessings, there's no issue of blessing in vain. So we don't really care to go back and do it again. What you got nothing to lose. When it comes to the Amidah, though, sometimes it could be a blessing in vain. So you have to be a little bit more careful sometimes, not to go back and do it again, in certain cases. Okay, we'll get to that soon. Laws of prayers. It's next. After Kriyat Shema comes prayers.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So I have a class in my school, it's like an enrichment class that I teach in sign language. And we were looking at the Shema in sign. And the girls had asked me, like, first of all, someone who's deaf, they can't hear themselves saying it. So does signing it meet that requirement, or is it not? Are they not obligated because they're deaf, or how does that work?
Oh. So wait, let's get this straight, right? You're teaching in sign language?
Yeah, I'm teaching it, like teaching the girls sign language as an enrichment.
Oh, you're teaching them sign language. Oh.
And so one of the things that we were doing was I was showing them, I had found the Shema in sign in ASL.
Oh, wow.
They had the question of,
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
so they had a lot of questions. One of them was like, if you're signing, you can't cover your eyes because you're using your hands. So first of all, and then secondly, and that was not a big one. The second thing was like, you're supposed to say it, but someone who can't hear themselves saying it. So does signing it, since that's the language a deaf person would use, does that meet the requirement, or are they not obligated?
Wow. Well, I mean, first of all, the question is, are you talking about men or women? Obviously, the women are exempt anyway, right?
Let's assume a man.
So if you're talking about a man, I think we already mentioned, right? If I'm not mistaken, if a person can't say it for some reason, what he should do is think it.
Okay.
So that would probably be the best solution for a person who can't say it.
Okay, so the saying it out loud.
Because signing it, is not something which is recognized in the Torah so much. You know what I mean? So
Well,
it's like you're doing something which
you should say it in the language you understand. So if that's your language is ASL,
that's very interesting, right? It's not really a language though, because you're not saying it. So it's sign language, like it's called, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, probably the best thing to do would be to think it. But the truth is, that like, as just saying something, out of logic, right? Doesn't really have a source, this what I'm telling you. But logically speaking, it would be good if you would also sign it. In other words, if you can do that, since sign languages are like officially accepted now in the world. So, it's sort of like a language, sort of, like whatever.
But it is accepted as a language. Whether
I'm
it's
sorry.
accepted as a prayer language, I don't know. But once we were talking about, like, we were saying it and practicing saying it and signing it together, just by way of teaching them something using something they already know. But then they were asking questions about how a deaf person would say the Shema. I didn't know what the halakha was for that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But I know that the
the only you mean because he can't hear it.
He can't hear himself say it.
But can he say it?
Well, I mean, maybe it depends on how long a person's been deaf. If they were deaf since birth, they might not even be able to say it.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's all discussion, but it seems like, if you can't read it, as we said, right, the best thing to do is to think it.
But I know that
Yeah.
in Shulchan Aruch, they do mention like the deaf mute regularly. I didn't know if there was anything in there about in terms of Shema.
Yeah, we already said that, right, if you can't say it, that's the way to do it.
Okay, just to think it. Okay.
Yeah.
And no thoughts on whether they eye covering? Can they
but-
close their eyes? Can they?
I mean, it does require some research, this question, requires some thought.
Okay, well,
It's
they
not,
threw it at me and I'm throwing it at you.
it's not such an easy question. I mean, but like just, the initial gut feeling is like that, right? The just simple answer.
Okay, thank you.
And then after that, we have to think about it a little bit more. There's also another question, which is that, if a person is deaf, is he obligated to say the Shema or not?
That was my other question.
Right. So the truth is, I think we discussed this a little bit, but I think we're going to discuss it a little bit more, like afterwards in the following chapters. So I guess we'll see ahead of us, what's going on with that. Okay, interesting. So yeah, we're done with that chapter. Let's go to the next one. Which is Samech Hey. This is also pretty small. I'm just bringing it up here. Okay, so it says in the Torah, קרא סירוגין, אפילו שהה בה כדי לגמור את כולה, יצא. So the question is like this, right? If he read it, but he stopped in the middle, So he says, even if he stopped long enough to read the whole thing, he still fulfills obligation. So the fact that he stopped in the middle and then continued doesn't prevent the mitzvah.
I'm sorry, in the middle where? In the middle of the first
Anywhere. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So he says, "V'hu shelo shaha b'intayim mechamat ones." He says that's only if he didn't wait because of some kind of an impreventable situation. Sheikvo milkot that prevented him from reading. Aval im shaha mechamat ones. But if it was something like that which was unpreventable, shelo haya makom rawi lekot. Let's say, for instance, he couldn't read it there, because it was a filthy place, whatever, or ones acher, or some kind of other issue. So then if he stopped and he waited until he could finish the whole thing, so now he has to start from the beginning, right? In other words, he's got to do the whole thing over. That's what he's saying. Okay, let's see what Yosef said. Yeah, so it says in Bet Yosef, Beperk Mishameto, right? So this is the source, right? In the Gemara, Chav Bet Amud Bet, Tanu Rabbanan. It says over there, Haya Omed Betfilah, if he was praying, Umayim Shotetin Al Birchav, and he's got water splashing on his knees, whatever. Posek Ad Shiuchlu Mayim, he stops until the water keeps the water stops. Right. So you know what he's talking about here? He's talking about that he's urinating, right? That's the problem. That's the water he's talking about here. Urine. So he should stop until it stops and then continue. And then he goes back and prays. The question is, where does he go back to, right? Rav Chazda and Rav Hamuna, two rabbis. Chad Amar Chozer Rosh. One says you got to go back to the beginning, right? In other words, the whole thing is messed up. Right? The Chad Amar Lemakom Shepasak. One says no, go back to the place where you stopped. Amar Rabbi Asher. Right? So it says Rabbi Asher, the Kuli Alma Im Shahak Dedigmot Kula. Everybody agrees that if he waited the time that it takes to finish the whole thing, Chozer Rosh, he goes back to the beginning. There it's talking about they didn't wait that long. They're arguing about. But Katav Arif says the Rif, B'Shem Rabbeinu Hai, name Rabbeinu Hai. The halacha, Keman Diamar. Halacha is like the one who says, "L'makom shepasak." He goes back to where he stopped. But if he waited until the time that takes to finish the whole thing, then he goes back to the beginning. He says afterwards. It says. So this rabbi says, I was going after Rabbi Yochanan, following him, right? He was saying Kriyat Shema, when he came to a dirty place, he stopped reading, right? He had to stop. Amar lo Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan tells him, Le'echan Adar. He asks him, right, where should I return? In other words, where should I pick it up? Where should I read it from? Amar lo im shahita k'dei ligmod kula. So he tells him, if you wait until if you stop the time that it takes to finish the whole thing, then go back to the beginning. Umparash b'gemara explains in Gemara, dehachi kama. This is what he says. Le'ledidi lo svirali. He told him like this. He says, I personally don't agree with you, right? To what you're saying. Ledidach tesviralach im shahita k'dei ligmod kula. That you hold that if you waited until time to finish the whole thing, go back to the beginning. Katav Shema Rif. So it says there the Rif, Keshehu chozer makom shepasak. When he goes back to the place where he stopped. Even though he waited to finish the whole thing. Maskana besof masechet Rosh Hashanah. That's the conclusion also on the Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara over there, Lamed Al Lamed Bet. Also in when it comes to the shofar, also in the Halil, also Megillah, same thing, all the things, same thing, all same. But it says if it's just prayers, if you waited to finish the whole thing, she's got to go back to the beginning. So the Rambam says over there. But Tosfot Katvu, they wrote Ahad Amar Rav Asher regarding that which Rav Asher said. The Kuli Alma Im Shahak Kedei Ligmod Kula, that everybody agrees that if you waited to time to finish the whole thing, she goes back to the beginning. Mashma De'achi Hilchata implies that's halacha. The Chen Kaman Be'edya says also afterwards, right? Explicitly, Amar Rabbi Avu. This rabbi said, she goes back to the beginning. The Masechet, it says, it's a wonder why. The Masechet Rosh Hashanah, because over there in Rosh Hashanah, Lamed Al Lamed Bet. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Shema Tesha Tekiyot. If he heard 9 times the shofar, the Tesha Sha'ot in 9 hours, whatever, Bayom in the day, 9 hours of the day, Yatzah, he fulfills obligation. Alma Tekiyot Bistarfot. So you see from there that these blowings of the shofar, they combine together, even though they were at different times. Even though he stopped the time to do the whole thing, also Megillah, Nami Amar, says the Rab, Allah is not like this rabbi. The Amar Im Shahah Chozer L'Rosh. That if you waited that long, he goes back to the beginning. The Kamar Nekot the Rav Bibi Biadecha Beomer Asar Mikulzi Tevadai Hecha De Shahah Beemsa. So, right, this rabbi says that for sure that if he stopped in the middle, Kedei Ligmod Kula, to finish the whole thing, below Dichui, without any delay, be'ones, without any good reason, without any unavoidable circumstance. He just stopped on his own volition. ואם היה רוצה מעצמו, היה יכול לגמור. But if he wanted, he really could have finished it. Just he decided to stop for some reason. So in a case like that, he says he doesn't have to go back to the beginning. The Megillah, it says in Megillah, the Rosh Hashanah, like it also says in Rosh Hashanah, the Shema Tisha Tekiyot, that he heard 9 blowings of the shofar, but Tisha Shaot, 9 hours, beyond day, אבל היכא דשהה מחמת שהיו מים משוטטים, but if he delayed because he was urinating, right, al berchav, on his knees, ולא היה יכול להתפלל באותה שעה, he wasn't able to pray at that time. Obviously, when you're taking a pee, you can't right, you can't pray at that time. תקולי עלמא אם שעה כדי לגמור. So everybody agrees, right, that if he waited in order to finish the Kula, the whole thing, then he's got to go back to the beginning. Why? Because he wasn't able to continue. It was unavoidable. So he says, now it comes out good that he told him, Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yavu, he told him, he says, I don't really hold like you. I don't hold that you have to, right, to stop. Hilkach says, therefore, so you didn't really have to go back to the beginning, according to my opinion. Aval, but he says, according to your opinion, you stopped the because the place over there is not proper to read there. It's a dirty place. So therefore, if you waited to finish the whole thing, you have to go back to the beginning. That's what it says in Rashba. The Shema Ravad, name of the Ravad. Zal v'chen pasak Sham Aruch. It's also in the Rosh. Rabbeinu Satam Devarav Kan was seen. So he says, in Rabbeinu the Tur, he said like the Rosh here. V'siman Ein Het Kedat Aruch, and also in the other place, chapter 78, like the Rosh. V'chen Katab v'siman Pehe, also in 85. V'shem Bari, the name of the Ri. V'shem Katab She'ariv Cholek B'davar. And there, over there, he mentioned that the Rif argues with this. Rabbeinu Yonah Katab, says Rabbeinu Yonah, B'shem Rabbeinu Tzarfat, the rabbi, the French rabbis, in the name of the French rabbis, that even when it comes to prayers, if he waited to finish the whole thing, so he should go back to the place where he stopped. He didn't differentiate whether it was unavoidable or not. So I already wrote that this is the opinion of the Rif, Rambam also. So that's the halakha, he says. It says over there, Pek Bet, Ravia Katav, this rabbi wrote, Den lechalek ben hefsek shetika lehefsek dibur. Oh, so he says there's no difference between whether you stopped silently or also you spoke as well. Same halakha. When it comes to Kriyat Shema, right? When it comes to Amidah, it's a different story. We're going to see that later on. But Kriyat Shema doesn't make any difference. Okay, so let's see the Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop there. Okay, so it says the Shulchan Aruch, Karar Sirugin, right? He read it with stops, right? He stopped. דהיינו שהתחיל לקרות בפסיק בין בשתיקה בין בדיבור, וחזר לגמרה. So what happened was that he stopped, whether he was silent or even if he spoke. And then now he's coming back to finish it. Even though he waited to finish the whole thing, enough time to finish the whole thing, יצא, he fulfills obligation. Even if it was something which was unavoidable, like, he's peeing, right? No, excuse my language, right? He's peeing in his pants over there, right? So he can't pray like that, right? So he can't read like that. Okay, so says the Rama, right? V'yesh omrim de'im haya anus. Says the Rama, some say that if it was unavoidable, right? Like we said, he's peeing in his pants, right? Unavoidable. He can't stop it, right? They've sick, and then he stopped there. And in order to finish the whole thing, enough time. There are some opinions that say he has to go back to the beginning, as we said, right? So he says that's the custom. So it seems like the Ashkenazim are more machmir here than the Shulchan Aruch, right? So according to Shulchan Aruch, you don't have to go back. According to Ramah, you have to go back here. So now says the Ramah, Musharin inyan hashiyah lefi koreh v'lo lefi rov bnei adam. So he says, how do you know how much time it takes to finish the Shema? So it says it goes according to that person, that individual, right? Not according to everybody. It's the same thing also it says over there, chapter 104. So in other words, if it takes you 2 minutes to read the Kriyat Shema, then we're talking about 2 minutes, right? If it takes you 10 minutes, then 10 minutes, right? Or 5 minutes, whatever it takes you, right? That's how we measure it. But according to the first opinion, as we said, according to Shulchan Aruch, even if you waited 10 minutes or more, you still don't have to go back to read it from the beginning. Just continue from where you left off. Okay, how's that? Good? Any questions? Okay, very good. Thanks for coming tonight. Be blessed with wealth, health, happiness. See you tomorrow with Hashem. Chazak Baruch. Be holy and be happy. And we're getting close to the holidays, so you better get ready.
Amen. Thank you, God.
Thank you so
Make sure you start cooking already on time. Don't wait till the last minute. Okay, unless you're quick. Some ladies are very fast, so they can cook very fast. That's a different story. Okay, Laila Tov.